Dr. Lyra Marlowe had always been fascinated by the stars. As an astrophysicist, she spent most of her days in the quiet, dimly lit corners of the research station, sifting through data that most people would never think to look at. She wasn't interested in the mundane. The standard transmissions from satellites and probes didn't catch her attention anymore. It was the deep space signals, the ones that seemed to come from nowhere, that held her focus. For years, Lyra had been studying an unusual SOS signal. It wasn't just any distress call. It had been broadcast from deep space, traveling for thousands of years across the cosmos. No one could explain where it had come from, and it seemed to defy all logic. The message itself wasn't clear at first, but there was something undeniably strange about it. It had a structure, a rhythm, as though it was trying to communicate something specific, something important. And yet, every time Lyra ran the numbers or analyzed the patterns, it led to dead ends. Earth was on the edge of disaster. The world was struggling with a brewing intergalactic war. Nations had fought bitterly over resources, and humanity was beginning to look beyond Earth for what they couldn't find in the depleted soil and oceans. They had discovered alien technology, archaic and mysterious, but not enough to avert the war. The politicians, military officials, and business leaders had all decided that the solution lay in a stronger military presence among the stars. Scientific exploration was seen as a waste of time, an idealistic fantasy. But Lyra wasn't a politician, and she wasn't a soldier. She was a scientist, and she believed in something different. She thought the future of humanity didn't lie in the weapons of war. It lay in knowledge, the unknown. She pushed relentlessly for funding, for resources to continue her research, but the political powers wouldn't listen. They told her that space exploration had no place in the current world order. They told her that the military was the only way forward. So, Lyra kept her discoveries quiet. Her obsession with the SOS was personal now, a way to prove that humanity's future could be something better, something more than fighting for survival. Then, everything changed. She worked alone in the research station, surrounded by the hum of machines and the glow of computer screens. Lyra's efforts finally paid off. The signal had always been fractured, broken into pieces that didn't fit together. But in the quiet of the night, when the world outside was sleeping, Lyra managed to decode the final segment. Her heart skipped a beat as the last portion of the message clicked into place. It wasn't a simple distress call. It was a map. Coordinates appeared on her screen, leading to an uncharted star system. But there was more. The message was urgent, too urgent. And it wasn't addressed to anyone. The message had been meant for humanity alone. Someone had been waiting for Earth to come. Lyra stared at the coordinates, her mind racing. What was this? Why had this message, this SOS, been sent to Earth and no one else? Who had sent it, and why did they want humanity to arrive? The implications of this discovery were too great to ignore. She knew she had to act, and act fast. She sent a message to the highest authorities on Earth, the leaders of the world's most powerful nations. They needed to know about the coordinates. They needed to know about the message. She couldn't afford to be ignored again. At first, the response was predictable. Governments, especially the military, treated it with skepticism. They questioned her methods, her conclusions, her motivations. But when the urgency of the message became undeniable, the tone changed. Military fleets were mobilized and plans were made. The Earth's most powerful space fleet was now under orders to follow the coordinates, to investigate what was waiting for them in that distant star system. But as the fleet prepared to launch, something deep inside Lyra told her that this wasn't just a discovery, it was a summons. The SOS had been broadcasting for eons, frozen in time, waiting for the right moment. And now, Earth had the technology to respond to it. The human race, standing on the precipice of war and collapse, had been called to this far-off star system, a place where no one had dared to go before. Lyra was both thrilled and terrified. She had spent her life searching for answers, for signs of life beyond Earth, for anything that could show humanity that they weren't alone in the universe. But this was different. This wasn't just a signal. It was an invitation, and it came with consequences. The realization hit her like a wave. They weren't just going to explore a new star system, they were walking into the unknown, with everything at stake. If they weren't careful, they might find themselves at the mercy of a civilization far older and far more advanced than anything humanity could ever imagine. Or worse, they might unlock something they weren't prepared to handle. And yet, despite the fear and uncertainty, Lyra couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Maybe this was the moment humanity had been waiting for a chance to prove that they were more than just conquerors, more than just warriors. Maybe this was the opportunity to show the galaxy that humanity could rise above its flaws and create something greater. But that hope came with a heavy burden. The world was on the brink of war, and this message could be the key to either ending the conflict or igniting it further. As Lyra gazed out into the vast expanse of space, she realized that the answers they would find might be more dangerous than she ever imagined. She wasn't just decoding a message anymore. She was standing at the edge of an intergalactic secret that could either save or doom humanity. And the clock was ticking. The massive fleet of warships, humanity's most powerful, was now heading into the unknown. Dozens of ships, packed with elite soldiers, scientists, and engineers, hurtled through space toward the coordinates Lyra had uncovered. The mission was clear: discover what had sent the SOS message, and find out why humanity had been specifically chosen. But Lyra couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Something about the signal had always felt off. It was too perfect, too deliberate, like it was meant to lead them somewhere dangerous. As the fleet passed through the final stretch of space toward the alien star system, the true nature of the coordinates began to emerge. Lyra and her team had been working around the clock, analyzing every fragment of data they could find about the star system. What they learned was disturbing. The system that had once been home to a thriving galactic civilization was now a graveyard, its stars dimmed and planets turned into lifeless husks. The system itself was dying, but not from natural causes. The star that had once been the heart of the system was decaying, its energy being sucked away by something ancient and unknown. This wasn't just the end of a star, it was the end of an entire civilization, and something had caused it. Lyra dug deeper into the data. A chilling realization hit her. The SOS signal wasn't a call for help, it was a warning. The system was a trap, designed to draw civilizations in and drain them of their energy. An ancient alien technology, still active after millennia, was at the center of the decay. It was capable of manipulating the very fabric of space-time, drawing energy from living things and even altering the laws of physics itself. Lyra's heart raced as she realized the gravity of the situation. The technology in that system had the potential to be a weapon beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. If it fell into the wrong hands, it could destabilize not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. But if humanity could harness it, they could become the most powerful force in the universe. The moral dilemma hit hard. Should humanity risk everything for the power to rewrite the laws of physics? The temptation was enormous, but the cost of failure was unimaginable. She knew the stakes were higher than just the fate of the fleet. They were now at the edge of deciding the fate of the entire universe. But the situation was even more complicated than Lyra could have imagined. As the fleet approached the star system, political tensions began to rise. The world's once unified response to the SOS was starting to fracture. The various global powers, each with their own ambitions and interests, began maneuvering for control of the fleet. It was clear that everyone had their own agenda. The military commanders, who had originally agreed to share power and resources, now saw the alien technology as a way to secure their place at the top of the new intergalactic order. Some of them were more than willing to use force to seize control. Others saw the technology as a bargaining chip in the coming political struggles. Even the scientists, Lyra included, were divided. Some believed the technology should be studied carefully, with full knowledge of the potential dangers, while others were convinced that humanity could and should use it to gain an advantage. As mistrust, spies and double-crossers infiltrated both the fleet and Lyra's research team. There were whispers of betrayal of people who were willing to take extreme measures to secure power for themselves. The lines between allies and enemies were starting to blur. Lyra's own situation became increasingly complicated. Her former mentor, Dr. Samuel Rhodes, had once been a close friend and colleague. He had always supported her research, even when the rest of the world dismissed it. But now, as the fleet approached the alien system, Lyra noticed a disturbing shift in his behavior. Dr. Rhodes had risen to a high position within the military leadership of the fleet, and it became clear that his goals were no longer aligned with hers. Lyra had always known that he was ambitious, but now she suspected that he had more than just scientific curiosity in mind. Rhodes seemed intent on using the alien technology to elevate himself, no matter the cost. Lyra had always believed in the good of humanity. She had spent her life searching for signs that Earth could rise above its flaws. But now, standing on the edge of this ancient, dangerous technology, she realized that the very people she had trusted could be the greatest threat to humanity's future. As tensions between the various factions on the fleet escalated, Lyra found herself caught between opposing forces. The race to control the alien technology had begun, and the lines between right and wrong were becoming increasingly blurred. Would the military use force to seize control? Would the scientific community act with caution and restraint, or were they also driven by greed? The uncertainty was suffocating. Meanwhile, the mystery of the alien civilization deepened. Lyra's team discovered something remarkable: evidence that the ancient race, who had once called this star system home, had been wiped out by the very same technology that was now threatening Earth. The civilization had once been one of the most advanced in the galaxy, but they had fallen victim to their own creation. The weaponized technology that had powered their rise had ultimately led to their downfall. But why, then, had they sent the SOS message to Earth? Why had they chosen humanity, a species on the verge of collapse, to receive this deadly invitation? Was the alien race trying to warn humanity? Or were they hoping that Earth would be the one to stop the technology, just as they had failed to do? As Lyra ventured deeper into the alien system, she found strange artifacts, fragments of the extinct civilization scattered across the barren planets. Each discovery added another layer to the puzzle, but the answers were still out of reach. Why had they turned to such destructive technology in the first place? Why had they fallen? The pieces of the puzzle were scattered across the void of space, and Lyra's team was racing to put them together before it was too late. Every answer seemed to lead to more questions, and the stakes were growing higher. With political intrigue swirling around her, and the very fabric of reality itself at risk, Lyra realized that the answers they sought might not be the salvation humanity hoped for. Instead, they might be the key to humanity's destruction. The countdown to reaching the heart of the alien system was ticking, and every step they took brought them closer to a truth that could either save the galaxy or unravel it completely. Would humanity rise to the challenge, or would they fall prey to the same mistakes that had doomed the alien civilization before them? The alien star system had already revealed its deadly secrets. The technology at the center of the decaying star was nothing less than a time manipulation device, a tool that could rewrite history itself. Lyra had learned that much, but what she didn't expect was the devastating truth that was about to turn everything she thought she knew on its head. It wasn't just the alien race that had fallen victim to this force. As Lyra and her team pushed deeper into the ruins of the ancient system, a chilling discovery was made. The SOS signal had come not from some ancient alien civilization, but from the future. Humanity's future self had sent the message across time and space. Lyra's heart stopped. She rechecked the data, certain she had missed something. But as the pieces came together, the truth became undeniable. The signal, the coordinates, the very structure of the message, it was all designed to warn them, to warn humanity not to follow the same path that had already led their future selves to ruin. The humans of the future had somehow unlocked the ability to manipulate time and space. They had mastered the alien technology, but with disastrous consequences. In their attempts to stop humanity's inevitable downfall, they had only trapped themselves in an endless cycle of decay. They were repeating history, each intervention only making things worse. The future was broken, a timeline spiraling into an apocalyptic end, and the future humans had come to one heartbreaking conclusion: there was no way out. The SOS wasn't a cry for help. It was a desperate attempt to prevent the very actions they themselves had taken. The future was doomed, and humanity's only hope was to avoid repeating the same mistakes. But the truth, as Lyra now realized, was far worse than any of them had imagined. The technology they had activated, the very device that was supposed to prevent collapse, was the thing that had caused it all. It was a self-perpetuating loop. By using it, humanity could either escape their fate or seal it forever. Lyra sat back, her mind racing. The implications were too vast, too complex to process in a single moment. She had once believed that knowledge was the key to humanity's salvation. If they could just understand enough, unlock enough mysteries, they would be able to overcome their flaws. But now, she saw the truth. Knowledge had been their downfall. The more they learned, the deeper they fell into the trap of their own ambition. Her gaze turned to the device at the heart of the alien system, the one that had already rewritten so many timelines. It was a power unlike anything Earth had ever known. It could reverse humanity's inevitable collapse. It could erase the mistakes of the past. But as Lyra stared at it, a growing sense of dread settled in her chest. The very thing that could save them might also be the force that destroyed everything. Lyra was faced with a choice, one that tore at the very core of her being. She could activate the device, rewrite history, and prevent humanity's eventual downfall. But there was no guarantee that doing so wouldn't unleash a greater catastrophe. What if changing the timeline only worsened their fate? What if the universe itself unraveled in response to the disruption of time? The other option was just as terrible. She could destroy the device, preserve the timeline, and allow humanity to continue down its path of self-destruction. Humanity would never escape the cycle of greed, war, and collapse. They would eventually fall victim to their own ambition, just as the future had. But they would also live in the present, free of the consequences of meddling with time. The weight of the decision crushed Lyra. She thought back to everything that had led her here, her desire for knowledge, her hope that humanity could become something better. She had always believed that there was a way forward, that they could rise above their nature. But now, the truth was clear. Human nature was their greatest enemy. It was their endless drive for power, their insatiable ambition, that had caused the galaxy to unravel in the first place. And no matter how much they tried to change, no matter how much they learned, they would always be trapped in that cycle. She thought of her former mentor, Dr. Rhodes, the man who had once believed in her, the man who had helped shape her ideas. He was gone now, lost to his ambition, willing to sacrifice everything for the power of the alien technology. He'd become a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. But even Rhodes, in his drive for control, hadn't realized that humanity's true enemy wasn't the alien technology or the forces trying to control it. It was themselves. Lyra closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The choice before her was unbearable. She could not change the future. She could not undo the mistakes humanity had made, and she couldn't stop them from making the same mistakes again. The only thing she could do was decide whether to preserve the present or abandon it, knowing full well that no matter what, the cycle would continue. As she stood there, on the edge of history, Lyra felt the weight of 1,000 lifetimes pressing down on her. She realized then that she wasn't just a witness to the future, she was a part of it. The choices she made now would ripple through time, shaping the path that would follow. And yet, she knew that even if she made the right choice, it might not matter in the end. Humanity would always fall prey to its nature. The only question was whether they would fall now or in the distant future. And in that moment, Lyra understood the true horror of the SOS. It wasn't just a warning from the future. It was a reflection of the human condition itself, an unending loop of hope and despair, of striving for greatness and falling short, over and over again. The true enemy wasn't the technology. It wasn't the alien forces that had created it. It wasn't even the future that had sent the SOS. The enemy was humanity's own unyielding drive for power, for control, for domination. That was what had led them to this moment. That was what would always lead them back to this point. And until humanity could learn to break free from that cycle, there would be no future. Only endless decay. Lyra's choice now seemed even more insignificant. She could preserve the present, knowing that humanity would never escape its nature. Or she could risk it all, try to change the future, and perhaps destroy everything in the process. Either way, the cycle would continue. And so, with the weight of the universe on her shoulders, Lyra made her decision. The final moments felt like a slow-motion collapse, the weight of decision pressing on Lyra as if the very stars themselves were holding their breath. She stood alone before the time manipulation device, her fingers hovering just above the panel that could either destroy humanity's future or reshape it forever. The fate of the universe had never seemed more fragile. Lyra's mind was a battlefield. The device before her could rewrite history, could prevent the disastrous fate that future humans had tried unsuccessfully to escape. But to activate it was to risk erasing the very fabric of time. To destroy it was to condemn humanity to the cycle they had already set into motion. There was no clear path. There was no right answer, only the consequences of choices made. But as she stood there, heart pounding, an unexpected thought pierced through the chaos of her mind. What if there was a third option? Lyra had spent so long thinking that the solution had to be a simple binary choice: destroy the device or activate it. But now, in the quiet of the alien ruins, she realized that both paths led to the same outcome. Humanity would continue to stumble, trapped in its cycles of greed, war, and collapse. The true solution, she realized, wasn't in saving the future or erasing the past. It was in learning from it. With trembling hands, Lyra made her choice. She activated the sequence to destroy the device. But as the countdown to its destruction began, something extraordinary happened. The alien technology, still pulsing with a power that seemed to defy understanding, revealed one last secret. The ancient race that had built this device, the race that had lived in this now dead star system, had once faced the same dilemma. They had created the time manipulation technology, thinking it would give them the power to avoid their own demise. But in their attempts to rewrite history, they had found themselves trapped in an endless loop of their own making. And just as humanity now stood on the brink of making that same choice, the alien civilization had chosen to let the cycle play out. They had realized that no civilization, no matter how advanced, could avoid the temptation of altering time for its own benefit. It was a test, one that all species, including humanity, would face. To break the cycle, the civilization had decided would require more than just the power of technology. It would require the wisdom to understand that every civilization, at some point, must confront its own nature. Only by facing that temptation and overcoming it could humanity ever ascend beyond its flaws. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as the last remnants of the alien message echoed through her mind. The device was designed not to save humanity, but to challenge it. The question wasn't whether humanity would survive, it was whether they could rise above their own destructive tendencies. That was the key to breaking the cycle. As the device shut down, the SOS message flickered one final time, but it wasn't the same. The static-laced message began to loop once more, but this time, it wasn't a desperate plea for help. It was different. The message now resonated with a deeper meaning. Humanity wasn't meant to be saved by alien technology. It was meant to make a choice. The future humans, now broken by their own attempts to alter time, had found a way to break the cycle, but it would only happen if humanity could achieve self-awareness. The looping signal sent one last, clear message: the choice is yours. It was no longer a warning or a plea. It was an invitation to decide what kind of future humanity would create, whether they would be the architects of their own salvation or the harbingers of their ultimate destruction. As the fleet turned its course back toward Earth, Lyra stood on the bridge, staring out at the vast expanse of space, her mind grappling with the gravity of what had just transpired. The alien technology was gone, destroyed in a way that couldn't be undone. The cycle of temptation had been broken, but now the future was uncertain. The path forward was no longer clear. What did humanity truly want for its future? Lyra knew that the greatest challenge lay not in the technology they had just left behind, nor in the forces that sought to destroy them. The true challenge was much deeper. The question that echoed in her mind, and in the minds of all who would listen, was whether humanity could transcend its own nature. Could they rise above their flaws, their instincts to conquer, to dominate, and to exploit? Could they choose a path of growth, of learning from their past mistakes, rather than repeating them over and over again? For the first time in a long while, Lyra felt the flicker of hope. She had once believed that humanity's greatest strength was its potential to overcome anything, to rise above the darkness that often threatened to consume it. But now she realized that hope was more complicated than that. It was a fragile thing, and it had to be earned not through technology, not through force, but through understanding. Humanity had the power to decide its fate, but only if it could learn from its mistakes. The journey ahead was unknown, and perhaps more uncertain than ever before. As Earth's fleet descended back toward its home planet, Lyra wondered what the future would hold. Would the people of Earth rise to the challenge? Would they take the lessons of the past and build a future that wasn't defined by greed and destruction? The echoes of the SOS message still rang in her ears, and the weight of the question lingered in her heart. What kind of future would humanity choose? The story wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. Lyra looked up at the stars, feeling a deep sense of wonder, but also a quiet fear. For the first time, she understood that the greatest challenge humanity would ever face wasn't external. It was within. Whether they would become a force for good or descend into the same patterns of failure was up to them. And so, the question remained, would humanity transcend its nature or be forever trapped in the cycle of its own making? The choice, as always, was theirs to make.